2, 1. Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Time Out with Tony. As always, I'm excited about today's guest. This is a panel of young men who each of them in their own special way have impacted my life. And I'm happy to have them there as my guests. You know, I think you're going to get some valuable nuggets out of what these young men have to share. They're doing tremendous work in the community. They're family men, they're men who are committed, and they're men who are just continuously finding ways to navigate this world as a man first and as a Black man second. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome my guests, Shawn Washington, Michael Williams, and Carl Cadet. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for
having us.
It's my pleasure. Listen, before we get into the questions and all that good stuff, I always like to have my guests talk a little about themselves so people know who you are. So just in a few minutes, if you could just tell people where you born and raised, where you from, so people will know. All right, Michael Williams is from here, Shawn is from here, Carl is from there. So I'm going to start with Carl first. Carl, tell the people where you're from.
I'm born in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was raised in the town of Randolph, about 10, 15 minutes south of Boston.
Shawn, you're up next.
Born and raised in the city of Boston, grew up in Dorchester. Grew up with my grandmother, grandfather, also in Roxbury as well. Went to school here in Boston, Boston Public Schools, college, UMass Boston, undergrad and graduate, Boston through and through.
Nice. All right. I'm the only guy from New York City on this. Born and raised in New York City, Harlem. Obviously, I lived in Boston for 3 years. That's how I met Tony, but I'm a New Yorker for life.
I saved the New Yorker for last, all right? So don't hate on him, all right? Don't hate on him. I saved him for last. No, good. I'm glad to have each of you here. So, gentlemen, let's get right into it. I want you to answer this question. Give me your definition of what a man is. Okay? Again, I want you to tell me, how do you describe and define a man? Who wants to go first? I'm a teacher. Don't make me call you out.
Mike. I think for me, there's so many things that a man is, right? A man is just not. I think in today's generation, today's society, we see the stereotypical man who feels like I have to be the leader of the household. I have to make this a certain amount of money, which I think has to be all debunked, right? A woman can make more money than a man, and that's totally fine, right? But the man has to be comfortable with that. You have to understand who you are and how you're going to give back to your family, to your community. And I think that's what a real man is somebody who understands what their value is, how to use their value to give to others, whether it's their children, their wife, their community, whoever it is. And I think that's what a man does, is they understand who they are. And I think that's what's missing in society. We think we know who we are, but a lot of men don't know who they truly are and don't know their values to bring to other people.
Excellent. Shawn, who's a man? What's a man, Shawn?
Yeah, when I think of a man, I'm thinking of someone who is modeling, a level of expectation that they want to see out of their younger folk, whether it's their students, whether it's their children, or modeling expectation for their family. Someone who is willing to take blame, but also give the credit to other people when it's necessary. And somebody who, has strong character, someone who is walking either in faith or whatever they believe in, and someone that has principles. So they know right and wrong. They're able to decipher between the two. They're able to teach to those that are following them right from wrong and be able to be a guidance onto others. So I think of a man as a leader figure, someone who's a staple of stability, and someone that is essential to the household, essential to a community. You need men in order for the advancement to happen.
Excellent. Carl, you're up.
I guess a man is a mixture of both what these gentlemen just kind of outlined, more so in terms of, a role model figure for others, and kind of like, Shawn said, a man, is expected to have character.
for me, I believe a man is someone who's accountable and someone who is also respectful, and is also to and is is held to a higher expectation. A man to me is someone that can be looked upon or called upon in time of duress and in time of need, and as a helper. Oftentimes men are looked at as, they have to do it on their own, and for me, I think that it's okay to be, to be a man, and to be, to be comfortable in your own skin, and to just be a leader. A man is a leader. He's responsible, and many different things. It's kind of hard to put it into things. It's a really complicated question because, I hate to just put it in a box. You know what I mean? And just say a man is supposed to be this or a man is supposed to be that. But
Right.
The core values I believe that a man should have is, he has to be accountable and he has to be responsible.
And what I've heard is a common theme from you guys is about accountability, leadership. So I did a series where I describe the 4 qualities of a good man, and in that, all the things you just said I think are embodied in the 4 characteristics. The first one is care, and that means he's got to have a heart to love unselfishly. Not with just ulterior motives, but he's got to just love unconditionally, whether it's his family, friends, or community. The second one is he got to be a man of character. So, he's got to be somebody that's a man of character, and that's got to mean a lot to him. Someone who's going to do the right thing because it's the right thing, even if everyone else against him, everyone around him is doing the wrong thing, but he's a man of character. The third one is competent. And I use competent in the essence of he's a problem solver. So all the examples you guys gave, a man's going to solve those problems, man. He's going to face them head on. He's not going to run from them. He's going to deal with it. And he's going to figure out a solution how to solve those problems. It could be something as simple as, man, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to do this, handle this situation at work? But he's going to solve that problem. And lastly, and speaks as an umbrella to all the things you guys just said, he's got to be committed. He's got to make a commitment that he wants to be the best, and he's going to do the best he can to help lift his family and his community. And he doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. But a man has a characteristic, I think, in my essence, and this is just my opinion, that all the things you guys mentioned are encapsulated in those 4 qualities of men. And I think, the challenge you guys touched on a little bit is how we define manhood today. And it's all over the place. And one of my follow-up question to you guys, to each of you, is this: because there's so many definitions of manhood, is it okay to be masculine? I see us moving away from that a lot, of just being masculine, or we use the term hypermasculinity all the time, especially when it comes to Black men. But is it okay just to be masculine, just to be a man?
Absolutely. I just think there's a place and time when you can show your masculinity, right? You don't have to pump your chest every situation you're in. And I think that's what has happened in the past. And that's caused a lot of issues in today's society. You have to know when it's time to pump your chest, when to show your masculinity, and then sometimes you have to be soft, right? Sometimes with your kids, you can't be so hard all the time. You got to give them some love and kiss your son. I think that's a big issue. And I was talking to a coach a few days ago. There was like a lot of kids tell me that their dads never kissed them or hugged them. And that's a problem. So I think that's because some men feel like you don't hug and kiss boys. So
that's a great point.
What Michael's touching on is this lion and lamb situation with masculinity and being able to teeter between the two, right? So, we can't always be that lion that's roaring and devouring our competition or devouring people, because, that's going to be perceived as this person's a hothead, this person can't control their emotions, etc. And, we can't be a lamb either all the time. We're always at lamb position, that perception of softness, meekness, feminine, whatever you want to call it, to disrespect us. So there has to be a level of balance where we give our son that hug and also give that discipline too, that what we call a warm demander, someone that's going to love and it's going to have an expectation of where you're going to go. And it's going to help you to get there with love and care. but with also a level of expectation with that as well. So it's a teetering balance here. And what we've seen in society today is this overly softness that's being pushed in the media and all around that's trying to diminish the greatness of masculinity. And we just cannot allow that to happen. We have to be able to know how to balance between the two. And we have good examples. We have good examples like in the scriptures with Jesus, of how he balanced being a lamb and a lion at times in his ministry work. It's that same thing when we go out and do our ministry work, whether we're teachers, coaching, what have you. We have to be able to know when it's time to spike up that lioness of us. And also when we have to give that love, that lamb in us as well.
Carl, how do you feel about that? Because the nature of your sport is all about masculinity.
Yeah, and actually, a lot of times I equate to my players, we call it emotional intelligence, right? You got to know, when it's appropriate, to stick your chest out, and when it's appropriate, which fights to fight and which battles, like you got to pick your battles. Too many times, a lot of kids, especially some of the kids that I serve, they come from communities where, they feel like they have to be that way all the time, or they'll get bullied. You know what I mean? Or they have to be masculine all the time, or they won't be accepted by others. And too often, there's no balance. You know what I mean? It's one extreme or the other. You're all the way a man's man, or sometimes it's just you're soft. You know what I mean? And too much, not enough times is there someone there to guide them and say, hey, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to walk away from a situation sometimes, and you know what I mean? Not always be the aggressor. You know what I mean? So I think it depends on the situation and also the culture that you're raised in. But to your point, just to answer the question, I believe, like kind of like Shawn said, you got to have a good balance of masculinity in your life, and you know what I mean, to be able to, one, to be understanding, and two, to also defend yourself at times when you feel like you have to.
And to your point, we see our young men role modeling whatever we do in front of them, right? So when they see men who handle their differences without always throwing their fist up, that sets a tone to them on how you can talk it out, and we can agree to disagree as long as we're not disrespectful. It doesn't make you a punk, doesn't make me a punk. We just found a way to come to a resolution without having to throw blows. Now, I'm not talking about having to defend yourself. That's a whole different connotation, right? If you have to defend yourself, you got to do what you got to do. But what we also see is that there's an attraction. This is what, let's get right to it. A lot of young men and men in general are posing to be real extra masculine because they're trying to impress a female, right? Females love the bad boys, right? Mm-hmm. So they're trying to be over bad, over masculine so they can attract those females. So I think we got to have some talks with our young sisters to let them know that, hey, you don't need a thug in your life all the time. This gentleman here is going to work. He's doing what he need to do. He's a good man as well. And I think we got to get that balance from both sides, because some of our women don't know what a man is either, how to find a good man. And a good man can be right in front of them, but they don't know how to identify him because they're looking for superficial things and qualities rather than looking at the inside of what that man's about. So growing up for you guys, who were those influential men in your lives? Or did not happen? Go ahead.
For me, my dad obviously was. He taught me the meaning of like having a good work ethic, working hard, just putting your nose down and just going to work. I think every day I saw him do that, provide for my family, and I think that's one reason why I work my tail off, right? Just because I saw it. And there's things that he struggled with as I grew up, but I knew the one thing he did, he loved us as much as sometimes he was too hard on us, but I knew it came from a place of love. And I think that's number one. Number two, I think it would be Mark Mitchell at St. Peter's. He taught me how to be a professional when I met him back in 2010. And then in 2013, I joined his staff. So he helped me understand the profession of coaching and athletics to where I didn't know it, where it was, right? I didn't know. So like, I'm an agent now, I represent college coaches. He introduced me to his agent. So he taught me a lot about being a professional. And then honestly, Tony, it's you. You showed me a lot about being a man. I think about the first time I came to Boston, Andy called you, and then me and you met. You opened up your arms to me. And I remember back then, I probably wouldn't have opened my arms up to some stranger. And now, look at me now. Anybody who calls me or just hits me up, I'm like, hey, I got you. What you need? And I'm always gonna stand open hand, and that's because of you. So I had 3 guys who told me all different type of things that was important.
Thank you, brother. Carl, who's that influential man in your life, man?
I think I grew up in a home of, I'm a first generation American. A lot of my family migrated here from Haiti. So my parents came here and they worked a lot, both my mother and my father. So I was often in the home with my older brothers and, my older sisters. And I really learned my values and my principles from my older brother who moved here from Haiti when he was about 16. We had a really close relationship because he didn't really speak English well. And I was his translator until he was able to, acclimate to the U.S. way of living. So he really kind of gave me my morals and my values, which I think kind of molded me into the person that I am today, and gave me the vision and foresight to be able to, 1, respect adults and respect my elders, and 2, to understand when my parents were being hard on me, kind of where they were coming from, because he was a lot older than me and a lot wiser. So he had a way of just kind of translating things to help me understand how to be mature at a young age. So for me, it was my older brother.
Excellent. Shawn.
Likewise, my older brother Delino was my influential man growing up. This was the coolest cat. We wrestled together. He brought me to the sports games together. He did everything like a big brother would do for his little brother. I mean, yeah, there's no brother that you would rather have than him growing up. And even to this day, his grit, perseverance to overcome many of the challenges that he's gone through in his personal life. And I watched that and I'm like, man, I gotta get my battle armor ready to go, because he's battle tested and he continues to fight every single day. To go and get that he needs in his life. And, it just continues to motivate me. And, his inspiration and helping me growing up is one of the reasons why I joined the Big Brother program, to be a big brother for someone who didn't have that same big brother like I did growing up, to kind of mimic and pass on what he was able to show to me, just about being tough, gritty, also loving and caring to your family, family man at his heart. I got nothing but praise for my brother Delino, man. So that's my guy.
So here's what all 3 of you just did. You just shot down that myth about there are no good Black men in the community. All 3 of you just did that just now, right? Because we hear that, right? We're the good Black men. We're the good men, especially in the Black community, as if we are somehow a ghost. We vanished. We just randomly just left our families, or and all 3 of you just gave a great examples of men who were influential, who had influence in your life, and that speaks to something that's been going on in our bloodlines for decades, generations, right? There's always been men around. They may not have been your dad, may not have been a family member, but there's always been somebody willing to pick up that slack. For some of us, it's been a coach, right, or a favorite teacher we had, or somebody, whoever, who was able to fill in the gap that maybe you didn't see it in your household, but they could definitely fill in some of the blanks for you in terms of how to carry and conduct yourself as a man. I want to get to this question because it almost piggybacks to that. As young men, you're all of you are in your 30s. You're making your mark in this profession and in your respective professions. Sorry, and you're making your mark in this world. As you're doing that, and Deshaun, you said something a little about being big brother program. Sorry. Are you obligated? And I want you to think about this question. Are you obligated to be a positive role model and to give back to the community?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Go ahead, sorry.
No, you good, man. Absolutely, man.
No, go ahead.
Cool. Yes, I think we definitely have an obligation. I'm an educator. I teach 3rd grade. I teach 8, 9-year-old children. So right away, there is a modeling that you have to do as a leader, to model learning, to model failing and getting back up, to modeling perseverance, to modeling community, how to build a community of learners who critically think about the world around them and ask questions and to do greater investigation about what's happening around their environment and how they can make improvements as activists, to advocate for their needs. Absolutely, there's a level of obligation for me as a Black man to continue to pass on what has been passed on to me growing up. And, you know, when I think about this, I think about that as a leader, right? This goes back to what the role of the Black man, masculinity, whatever you want to call it, what that role is. That's leadership, right? And when I think about that, I think about what Jesus did. As a teacher, I'm a teacher, so I'm just going to give this real quick of like the multi-tier layer of teaching and learning. So Jesus was someone who taught at a tier 1 level, which is like the whole classroom, teaching a lesson, a sermon, or what have you, that everyone was able to receive and everyone was able to be moved by the message that Jesus had, and teaching with his disciples and the people that was following him. But then check this out, when they needed more love, when there was some people that needed extra guidance, extra scaffolding, he had that tier 2 model. Peter, James, Shawn, come with me. I'm going to show you this particular miracle that I'm going to do. And I'm going to show you how we get this done. So he gave that smaller section of teaching, modeling for those that were in need. And then there's this tier 3 model, which is that one-to-one, those conversations where you and that other student to build up their capacity. Why is that important? Because for me, I need to understand all of my students. I need to understand all of the people around me and what their needs are and meet them at their needs. Some people, when I teach and when I give knowledge and wisdom, they can get it at that large level. But others, they need to be pulled to the side a little bit and be taught in a way that reaches to their needs. But if I'm not doing that kind of work, I'm not following the kingdom of God or what he's called on me to do. And so therefore, you know, I'm not advancing what was being called on me to do, which is advance, you know, the teaching of masculinity or the teaching of the purpose that I've been taught to have to give on to others, this knowledge, this wisdom. So this is like a very important piece that like it brings back the purpose of why I am even here to begin with, which is to give on to others what's been blessed onto me.
Nice. Michael, I think you were going to jump in.
For me, I think it's all about paying it forward, right? And we talked about a lot of great Black men. I've been blessed to get experience from a lot of different Black men who taught me a lot. And the one thing that they all taught me is pay it forward, right? Because I think we always hear like, oh, people don't help other people because I don't want somebody to take what I have. But we have to debunk that. There's enough for everybody. And I know in this place we call America, they kind of live on that. Like if you help somebody else up too much, they're going to take what you have. No, there's a place for everybody. And I think we have to open doors and not just open the minds for students and other Black men to understand that. Like you can make millions and plus he can make millions at the same time. You can teach him how to read and he's going to help you as well. And I think that's what it comes down to. And when you understand that, you feel an obligation to help everybody else because you want everybody else to rise because you know that there's room for everybody in whatever profession, whatever you want to do. And that's kind of how I see it.
That's a great point, Mike. Before I go to Carl, it's having that mature mentality to realize there's enough for everybody out here, right? We get that, you know, get all you can all you get. And we just sit on the lid, right? As opposed to like, listen, I'm going to get this, but I'm going to go back and show you how I did it, man, so you can help your family, and then you can keep passing this on to your boys and help them get off the block, man, by showing them the right way to do things. So you mentioned that was a great point. Carl, as a young man, are you obligated to give back to the community, man, and be a role model?
Absolutely. And you know, it's short because again, you know, these two gentlemen kind of hit it on the head. But you know, also we got to understand that, you know, the children and the youth are the future. You know what I mean? We're here to, you know, lay a path and build a foundation so that essentially one day that can be passed on. And if we don't give them the tools and give others the tools to succeed, then, you know, we're putting ourselves in a continuous cycle where there's an evolution that's not going to happen if we don't do that. So I think that we definitely need to put our best foot forward and help building, guiding, you know, the youth in a positive manner.
So here's why I asked that question, because I don't think that's other communities feel that's an obligation as much as we do. in some of the white communities, that it's not, they don't feel like it's obvious, and of course they give back, but there's always seems to be an added pressure on Black folks when we make it to a certain level that we are required to give back and do something back to the community. And some people bristle at that, right? They're like, listen, man, I got up, I did it my way, you get up out of the hood, do it your way, right? And there's that expectation, and you see athletes fall into this, a lot of entertainers. They're like, man, listen, why is that my responsibility? I made it, you go get yours, you make it. So that's why I asked you three, because you three are in influential positions where you're working with young people in different aspects, I'll add, but you're you're working around young people, and I know you love what you do. But I wanted to ask that question because I really wanted to know if it was in your heart. Is that something that you felt obligated to do, or you just do it because it's a job, it's whatever, you get paid for it? And you each answered that question very eloquently. And I think again there's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure on men, right? Particularly Black men. That's why I said that's added pressure. Do we want to walk in that? Go ahead, Mike.
Tony, real quick, can I just piggyback over that?
Yes,
I think that's another thing that we need to debunk, right? Because you mentioned white men and other cultures, they help each other out, right? You think about it, and it's different ways to uplift, right? If you go to Brooklyn and Williamsburg, there's a big Hasidic Jew population, right? They only buy at Hasidic Jews businesses. That's uplifting your next door neighbor next to you, whether you see it or not. Or you think about white men in Fortune 500 companies, right? Who are they hiring? They're hiring their friends, they're hiring their brothers, they're hiring their sorority sisters, they're hiring their frat brothers, right? It's nepotism at its best. We just as Black men in a Black society don't understand. They're doing it. They're just doing it in a different form where there's not as much pressure, as you said, but they're still doing it. They don't see it as pressure. They're like, hey, that's my guy. This is who it is. This is my community. So we're only going to buy from the Hasidic Jews, or we're only going to buy Black, or we're only going to buy a certain brand to help our own community. So it happens all the time. We just have to really realize that.
Where do you think, Mike, where do you think that mindset comes from?
From them or us? Which one?
From us, in terms of, not realizing that and not understanding that. Because, I mean, obviously, I just want to kind of hear your take on it.
I think it starts from, slavery ended, but we were mentally and emotionally still enslaved for a while. And even to this day, slavery still exists. It's just a different form. And I think once we were free, we were told, like, it's me, get me, give me, right? Where you had other slaves more or less killing their own people, because they're like, well, I got to make the master happy. I got to do this. And if I do this, I'm going to live in the big house, or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? And I think it's a mental slavery that we still have. And I think when the younger generation and us understand there's room enough for everybody, and everybody can eat, and I can give it to everybody, we'll be better off. I think that's really kind of comes down to for me.
At the center of that, what you just said, Michael, and shared, and it's been alluded to here, is I got to trust you. That's the big topic there. I got to trust you. And we've lost that trust, right? Like you said, man, I'm doing this over here, man. I don't want you peeping in what I'm doing. You mind your business, I mind my business. But can I trust you to give you what I got, the knowledge? Can I trust you to share with you? Can I trust you enough to build with you that you ain't going to put that knife in my back? And that's still a challenge in our community. Trust, right? I mean, it comes in all different types, whether it's one block versus another block, whether it's the cultural differences in our race, because we're definitely a mixture of cultures, right? You got the Caribbeans, the Africans, you got all that, African Americans, we got all that issue going on ourselves. Can I trust you? Mm-hmm. And that's a big challenge for us. So, gentlemen, I want to keep this going. I want to ask you this, as Black men, young Black men, what would you say is the biggest challenge today for Black men overall? Carl, I'll go Carl first because he hasn't never had a chance. He always says you guys could beat him to the punch. I'm gonna give him a chance to go first this time. Carl, what's the greatest challenge, man, for young Black men or Black men in general today?
I would say understanding his identity and understanding that it's okay to be Black, and and be who you are, be in yourself. I find that to be kind of some of the hurdles that I come across with a lot of these young men that I serve, is that a lot of them really don't truly understand who they are, and they struggle with that, and that leads to other things, whether it's following other people or doing things to just be accepted. That all stems from somewhere, and I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues or obstacles that I think a lot of Black young men face today, because so many variables, it spreads, and other problems, and a lot of other problems compile, and it layers on top of that. Because again, when you understand who you are and you understand your worth and you understand your value, there's a lot of situations that we as Black men wouldn't get into, right? There's a lot of problems that we wouldn't have if we understood, how valuable we were as people.
Hey, Shawn, what do you think is the greatest challenge, man, that we're facing?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest challenges is seeing, not fantasy wise on TV, seeing other Black men in prominent positions in your community. It's just rare, and because you don't have those images of teachers, coaches, mentors, doctors, or what have you, that are in leadership positions or in prominent positions, something that's obtainable that a younger Black child can see and be like, man, I want to be just like him. When I grow up, I want to be able to walk in that kind of way like he does. There's that issue where it becomes the people I'm looking up to is some dude shooting hoops on TV, and that's not a reality, because you don't connect with that person. You don't know that person at all, and that's the disheartening piece for me, is that there's just not enough of us that we see in our own community that is making things happen day in, day out. That's a part of our everyday walk. Of course, there are brothers that are doing what they need to do. And of course, there's images of that. It's not enough of it. And so what happens, this disconnect happens. Same thing with like school. It's this concept of like, when I go to school, like I see teachers that does not look like me, but I'm learning a curriculum that does not pertain to me. So why do I care about what's going on in the school when the learning doesn't make any sense to me, because it doesn't relate to me? It's that same concept. When we start talking about who we see in our environment, and whether or not those people are prominent in their positions. So for me personally, I'm trying to see more brothers like Carl and Michael around, in the day-to-day operation, the day-to-day walk of this life, so that kids can see those brothers and they be like, man, that's a man I want to strive to do something just like them when I grow up.
So before I go to you, Mike, what I've heard so far is one of the challenges is knowing ourselves and our value identity. And then from you, Deshawn, visibility, seeing us in these prominent positions on a regular basis, not the superstar we see on entertainment and on TV, but somebody who we can actually say, I know Mr. So-and-so, I know Mr. Washington, I know Mr. Williams, I know Mr. Cadet. I can go down to his house and talk to him. I agree with you. Mike, come on, Mr. New York, wrap this up for me. What's the great challenge?
Well, they hit it right on the nose, honestly, because it starts with knowing who you are, right? If you don't know who you are, you can't go where you want to be and everything else like that. So you got to know who you are. And it is so true. The younger generation has to see themselves in higher positions. And we don't get an opportunity to see that a lot. But I think for me, it's also about exposure, right? What are these young kids being exposed to at an early age? And when everybody was talking, I was thinking about when I used to work out in Brooklyn as a team program coordinator / college prep coordinator. There were so many kids that I witnessed and just met who never left the borough of Brooklyn. And then they get even deeper, never even left the state of New York City. So my job was trying to get them exposed. Hey, have you ever been to a college campus? No. So they never been to a college campus, so why would they even think about going to colleges? And I think those are all the different things. Like, we took them to a Broadway show, and now one of them majored in theater. And it's all those little things, and I think that's what our community is missing, where the kids are not exposed. And yes, you can talk about, well, we don't have the funding for it. It's all this other stuff. which is true because a lot of the more prominent white schools, they are going travel. Their senior trip is out of the country. On our senior trip, maybe be like down the block somewhere. I don't know. But I think it's all about exposure too. Like we have to expose these kids to different things that they're not used to, get them out of their comfort zone so they can see those things. And I think that's what's really going to help the younger generation.
So, what I believe is the greatest challenge, and I'm a different generation than you guys are, to Black men, is what we're seeing played out in the media. And we talk about masculinity and all that, you know, the effeminization of Black men. We see that happening a lot being pushed, and it bothers me. And number two, we either pushed as real soft and feminine, or we're missing altogether. Like, look how many interracial couples you're seeing on commercials, more than I've ever seen in my life. And it's never a Black man, or hardly ever a Black man. You mean to tell me a Black man can't sell soap powder? A Black man and a Black woman can't sell a car together? I mean, I'm just amazed when I see these commercials that you're telling me, where is the image of the strong Black family? Where's the image of that strong Black man and a woman walking together? They can't sell a product? And you see a lot, and this is no knock on my sisters, but a lot of Black women with white men in these roles, right? So if you subconsciously keep seeing that, what are our young girls seeing right now? What are they thinking, right? Here I'm on this call with 3 good young Black men, but you're not being represented, and I'm not being represented in these media platforms as desirable mates. To me, that's a great challenge right now that, again, I just didn't think I would see that in my life. And I've seen that pendulum shift, and it really bothers me. And I'm like, you know what, we got to get back to making sure our young men know that it's okay to be this, it's okay to be masculine, and it's okay to walk this out. But we got to make sure we are the ones defining what a man is, because if we're leaving it up to Hollywood, we're going to be confused.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And you see that.
Absolutely.
And to that word right there.
I want to jump into this one, because this is one that's there, and Shawn has already been sharing the scripture, so you can tell what his base is. But gentlemen, what role does religion or faith have played in your life right now? And if it is a sore subject for you, I understand. But did you grow up with faith? I don't want to say religion, because religion can be a bunch of traditions. But did you grow up with faith, and do you have faith? Right? Are you a man of faith right now?
For me, I am. I grew up in a Catholic household. Both my parents are Christian. My dad is actually Baptist. My mom is Catholic. So I went to Catholic church, Catholic school all my life, pretty much. I went to public school a few times. So I have a really good relationship with God, and that's something that I hold dear to me. The church and I guess the form of religion is a touchier subject for me, because I've seen the good in it, but I also seen the bad in it. And sometimes, and you could say maybe I'm jaded, but I've seen a lot more bad even within my family. You know what I mean? And I think that's some of the issues I have. So I'm never afraid to tell somebody I believe in God, that I have a great relationship with God, that I talk to him, I thank him every single day. But at the same time, and it's so funny because I had an interview today at a Catholic school, and the lady, we talked about religion and she loved it, but then she finished off saying, "Do you go to church?" And I said, "I haven't found a church that's the right fit for me." And then she said, "That's disappointing." And then she ended up saying, "Well, I can go to any church." So I think the church and religion for me personally has so much judgment that it kind of turned me off to it. There's just so much judgment around it that it has turned me off. And that has not turned me off to God and Jesus, because I still have a great relationship, but I no longer realize that I don't need a church or the form of religion to tell me how to love another man and how to have a relationship with God. I understand what God brings into my life, and I understand the good, the bad, and the different. God has taught me a lesson through all of it.
Can I just chime in?
Absolutely.
Because what Brother Michael's touching on, like, his home is the church. You know what I'm saying? That is the sanctuary right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's going through, you know, his time with God, however he goes with it, studying the word, praying, meditating, what have you. But the Bible talks about this, that our home is the foundation. This is where the church began, is at the home. So when we go about our prayer, we go about our faith walk, That's where it starts. So it disheartens me to hear that that woman said that. At the same time, it's like she doesn't know, because if she knew, she will already understand that this is the church where I am right now. This home right here, right now, where I pray, where I worship. This is the church for me, you know, and this is where I give my praise to God. As you can tell, faith is the center of my life. Has always been. My grandmother was a woman of Christ to the highest bidder. We would share scripture. She'll give that word in the King James version, even though I didn't understand half the language that was in there. There was messages that like started to resonate as the years have gone on. And I'm like, okay, that's what grandma was talking about. Okay, that's the discernment that she was showing when so-and-so took money and all these things, but she still loved that person, even though that they did wrong. She still loved them. Now I understand all these years later. Faith is essential to me and is the center of my life. I don't go out and promote it, you know, and put like Christian on the top of my head and let everyone know that I'm not, but it is the center. Is where, you know, I start my day with prayer. I pray with brothers in the morning, pray with brothers in the evening. I go about the day. When I have a moment, I meditate, think about the word, study my Bible each night. It is an essential part of who I am as a man. I wouldn't be able to stand if I remove God from the equation. I wouldn't be able to stand right now.
Excellent. Carl.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't be standing without him, Shawn, because you know, he's the alpha, the omega, and you know, God, Jesus, he's had incredible favor on my life and on, you know, my family's life, and you know, I've been blessed and very fortunate to know him. And you know, I grew up in a Catholic home. My parents were raised in the Catholic Church, and I was raised in the Catholic Church, but I didn't know him, or you know, I didn't know him until I decided that it was time for me to know him. And you know, until I started taking that journey for myself and going to visit different churches and religions, and I found myself in a non-denominational church where we just worship, and we just worship God. We just worship and follow his word in the Bible. And so that's kind of where we're at with it. But you know, my biggest thing is that, you know, I feel like he's called upon me to serve and to make sure that my children know him. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with where I feel most spiritually led is to understand, so that my kids are raised knowing who he is.
Amen.
And to all of your point, there's a reason why it's called a journey, right? It's a journey. It's a walk. I mean, it's meant to be walked out. And I think you go through different phases with your faith. Maybe you were a kid and your parents dragged you to church every Sunday, or they dragged you for Easter, those special moments, right? That's what I grew up with. And then eventually, as I got to be a teenager, I moved away from that, right? And then eventually, as an adult, I recommitted myself back to Christ because I just needed to find that balance. I was trying to hustle in the world, do this, do that, and the other thing. And what I found is that my faith, having that faith tied back to God, and my relationship with him, Micah, was what you're talking about, which is more important than what building I go to or what pastor I sit underneath. Yes, I want to be in a corporate body where I'm learning the word and a man of God, a woman of God is teaching that. But it was really about God sees your heart, right? So even from I'm the most illiterate person in the world, he knows my heart, and he and I can have a conversation. It never gave anywhere in scripture that said I had to be a certain way for him and I to have a conversation, right? And I think, Michael, to your point with that lady who talked about why you didn't go to church, first of all, that can be discriminatory. You need to be watching yourself. So that's unprofessional. But number two, the reality is, see, people get caught up in traditions of religion, right? They get caught up and we know a lot of people who go to church and look like they got a relationship with God, but they're just going through the motions of just going because I'm expected to be here. But the reality is about building that true personal relationship right where you stand with God, right? He sees you. He knows what you're doing. He knows you're coming and going, right? And it's really having that. But what I found for me as a man, and I don't know where it fits in your life, is that it gives me balance. Because we're always trying to hustle and we're working hard. We're trying to survive. And then I realized and I can't do this elimination. When you get to a point where you've done all you can do and they still ain't good enough, then you realize you need to lean on someone who has a lot more power than you have. And that takes maturity for a man to get to, because as you guys said earlier, we want to do it all ourselves, right? That's what men are supposed to do. We ain't supposed to ask for help. And that's a vulnerable place for some men to get to a position where they need to say, I need your help. I can't do this without you. And I think that's important for people who are listening to this right now, because everybody's in different relationships. And we've seen even during the pandemic, some people are starting to get more close to God after this pandemic, right? We've seen the decrease there. But I don't think we've seen that influx of young people your age coming back into the church once this pandemic is gone. So how do we keep them engaged? How do we keep you guys engaged? Because you guys don't want to hear that old stuff no more, right? You don't want to see the old stuff. We got to speak to you at where you are right now. So for a pastor who's listening, who's saying, man, I'm trying to get my young people back in the church, I'm trying to get young adult ministry going on, what would you say to that pastor on how to get your generation back involved and engaged in the church? What can he do?
I'll go. Come to the community. You know, I think sometimes with these churches, they're out of touch with what is happening around the church, the community. You know, I think with many churches, one thing that's been a standout is that, you know, they're not involved with community activism. They're not involved with advocacy work, not involved with what's going on with the youth. And because of that disconnect, those partnerships aren't there the way that it needs to be. Yeah, there's a lost gap where you have a lot of older people that's at the church and bringing their young children, but our age is absent, and that's scary, you know. And then the other part, and it kind of touched on with what Michael was talking about a little bit earlier, is that you have sometimes these factions. Church comes with some interesting stuff, to say the least, that you know, turns people away from God, you know. And like, why would I go to church when you all are not a church? You're really a cult practice doing XYZ stuff. Why would I even want to devote myself to this kind of practice when this is what you do? So there's an issue with the program, the overall mission of some of the churches, where it's falsified. And when it's falsified and you're not getting the truth, I'm not going to go there. So that's one issue. And then the other issue is the visibility. There's just not enough visibility where the church is going into the community. Everyone wants them to come to the church. The church needs to come to us. And being able to be in those basketball games and being at the schools and things like that, so that people could see like, oh, this is real. This is a real walk. It's not just coming on Sundays from 8 to 9, get the word and exit out, have a good week. This is a day-to-day operation. This includes us coming out and giving a little bit of what we know to our community.
Shawn, you're absolutely right. You hit that on the nose. You hit that right on the nose.
Yeah,
but
I think.
Go ahead,
Mike. Start. No, go ahead.
Carl, go ahead. I mean, I talk too much. Go ahead.
No, so again, you know, I was just, you know, I thought that was a really interesting point where you said that, you know, the churches always want people to come to them and they need to come to us. And, you know, I think obviously the church is a place for fellowship, you know, and obviously, you know, when people are in need, you know, they'll come. So I think that instead of, again, just trying to pull people, it can be more of an organic thing, you know what I mean? And just be open to the people that do come and serve the people that do come, and support the people that need the support however they need it, whether that's through Zoom calls, continue to do the Zoom and continue to do the online thing. And then, you know, when it's time, or will come if you are organically invested in your congregation.
I'm glad you brought that up, Carl, because I want to give churches some props too, because I think there have been some pastors who've been on the cutting edge of technology and who've used that to their full advantage. And you know, I was listening to a dialogue, I think it was a week ago, and the pastor said, you know, we got to change our model. It's no longer about members, but it's about subscribers. you know, and I thought that was powerful because he's talking about, you know, with the Zoom and the YouTube platforms and go online. That's one door that God has opened during this pandemic that churches are taking advantage of to reach more people than they probably ever imagined, and to get those younger people engaged, because younger people are all using online, their devices all day long. But also what I've seen, and I've seen this in my own church, is pastors restructuring the order of service and how they do service. It's not church anymore where we have these 2-hour sermons and services. They've learned to condense it because people aren't tuning in. They don't want to be there for 2 hours anymore, especially your generation. You guys ain't trying to sit up in church all day long anymore. That era has passed. But what you want, and Shawn and I have talked about this offline, give me the word, how it helps me develop and how I can put it into practice. The other stuff, the fluff and the pomp and circumstance, I can deal with it or I can't deal with it. So I think you got to find that balance of doing that, but also giving people just the word without the emotional high all the time. You know, and I think that's I hope people are learning, are getting that perspective, because to me, that's important as we go forward. And again, with building this and getting young people engaged in the faith community, because you're there. You guys are, all three of you guys are men of faith. You're there. So my question is, you know, Deshaun, you said this earlier, I don't walk around with a big sign that says Christian on my head, right? You don't advertise it like a billboard. But what I would say to all three of you, and I can personally say this, the light in each of you is what draws people to you. God said, let your light shine, right? And all three of you have a light, and it's come from your humility, and people are drawn to that. I want to segue in from that in terms of your light. Now, I want to talk about the challenges you guys have as young men, young Black men, for two of you, because you're single, one's married, and dating in today's world. What are some of those, what's it like dating in today's world? And then Carl, I'm going to go to you because Carl's married. I'm going to ask you, Carl, since you've been married, how long you've been married, but what are the benefits of being a married man? Because these are your peers, so they need to hear that, Carl. So Shawn and Mike, you guys are my single guys here. What's dating like for you two?
Go ahead, Carl. You can start.
No, Carl's my married guy. Carl's a married guy.
I thought you said Deshaun is married. All right. Well, I'm trying to be like Carl one day. So go ahead, Deshaun.
I love my sisters. I really do. I really do. You know, here's my struggle. See, the faith comes out, and one of the things that's led to struggle for me is that's an expectation. But see, I haven't gone to a place where I can scaffold, meaning I can get down to the level of the sister who is at her space in the walk and walk with her. So in the past, it would be, well, you know, where are you with your faith? Do you believe in God? Oh no, well, there's the door. Do you believe in God? Are you practicing your faith? Are you studying the word? No, then you gotta bounce. And what happens in that scenario is a couple things. One, you know, it's like, I don't even know how to break this down. It's like, I come off like arrogant or prideful in some way because I'm like the range is so different of like what the expectation is in terms of the walk. So there's that piece. There's also the piece of the sister being drawn away because of this is the center of my life is Christ. It's not you, the sister, or it's not, you know, me and your needs. You are second in line. You are another phase in line to what God has in store for me. So there's some disconnect with me that I'm praying on and I'm trying to work on myself, because at the end of the day, you know, I want to be like Brother Carl, have my own, you know, wife and, you know, have my own children, things like that. But, you know, it's a gradual step. Everyone has their own steps. And one of the things for me, I know for my life is I got to work on how to meet the sister wherever she is with her faith walk, so that we're walking like this together. Not, hey, you need to be up here and you're down here. That's not it. There's a little bit of that I need to work on.
That's a great point. I like where you framed that, Shawn. Being to meet her where she's at, and so you two walk and grow together. That's what relationships are all about, right? Walking and growing together. Michael, what's up? What are some of the challenges you have as a young black man dating in this time, man? Because you guys got all this technology, these dating sites. This is before my time, right? So this my time was way before we didn't have all this stuff. Back in my time, you actually had to go to a woman's house and call her on the phone and all that other stuff and deal with her dad and be, knocking the door shaking because dad's gonna answer the door. But you guys, it's a different world now. What are the challenges for you when it comes to dating?
Well, Tommy, I actually missed the time. I was never at the time where I had to knock on somebody's door, but I missed the time where you can just go up to a woman, introduce yourself, and talk. Now you have dating apps. A lot of people don't know how to talk.
Right.
And I found that a big challenge for me is, as you guys see, I have no problem with talking. I meet a lot of women who don't know how to talk unless it's through text, right? And I'm an easy texter. I love texting too. But when I see you in person, can we actually have a real conversation?
Right.
But just a little bit deeper for me, it's about finding a woman who has the same core values and principles as me, right? I think that's something that I struggled with before. Judgment is another one. I think, as Tony, you know me, I'm very judgment free. As long as your beliefs and what you're doing is not oppressing my people or hurting somebody, whether it's my person, my people, or somebody else, and you're not doing anything negative, I'm 100% for it, right? And I think the other big issue personally with me, what I have to overcome is my career. My career has been a challenging dating relationships. I'm very ambitious. I know what I want. But at times, and we look at my past relationship, and Tony, you know a little bit about that, careers didn't match, right? So somebody has to give up. So who's going to give up? I'm not ready to give up my career or even stop chasing my career. And sometimes it's not about stop chasing it, just do it a different way. And that's something I have to learn how to struggle with. And I'll even get a little deeper too for you guys is my ex is moving to North Carolina. She got into grad school fully paid for and got a really good stipend to be a GA at North Carolina Greensboro. She's a professional dancer. She wants me to move down there. And I told her, I'll move down there if I get a job. That's an issue. Shouldn't I be able to move down there without a job and then just pick up the pieces and figure stuff out? Yes. But for me, my pride is like, no, I need to have things set. And that's kind of how I grew up. You don't move it down there with nothing in your hand.
Right.
But I think my career has always been an issue for me. And then I even say, like, I have met women who are a little bit more closed-minded, where it's like, when I lived in Boston, I dated a wonderful young lady, but she was like, I'm going to live in Boston for the rest of my life. And that's fine. That's her belief. But that for me, I needed somebody who's willing to pick up and go. If, let's say, because at that time I was really chasing the coaching game, wanted to be a college coach, Division I. But let's say I got a job at UCLA. I guess I can't take it because the woman I'm with doesn't want to travel. So I think those are some of the issues for me.
Great points. Both of you guys raised great point in some of the challenges of dating during this time. And, really what I'm hearing is just really finding that right person, being patient. As Brother Deshawn, as you mentioned, God will bring that person to you. I can speak as a man who's been married over 25 years of the importance of having that woman who believes in your vision and you believe in her vision, and walking together and forming that bond as friends, first and foremost, because you'll know when you have that right person, because you'll be able to share your intimate dreams. And men don't like to share their intimate dreams with too many people, but you'll feel at ease sharing it with her, and she'll look you in your eyes and know that you're not just running game like the rest of the clowns she's been dealing with. And that's when you'll know that you got a good woman who's willing to walk with you. So Carl, I'm going to switch to you now because you're my only married representative besides me on this call, but you're a young man in your 30s. How long have you been married, Carl?
Been married coming up on 3 years in May.
So what's married life? Congratulations, but what's married life for you, man, as a young man at 30? What are the benefits of being married, Carl?
The benefits of it at a young age is, there's a lot of benefits to it. One, obviously having a mate, a friend, someone who can be there for you in your time of need at the drop of a dime, and someone you can rely on, and someone that we're spiritually and mentally connected. There's also stress. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to go out and worry about chasing other women and going through the whole dating cycle and spending my money, taking them out on dates, and there's there's a lot of benefits, man, and it's hard to just name one, but again, when you can find somebody that you can trust and can be spiritually connected to, there's nothing like it.
That's excellent. Go ahead. That it? Okay.
Yeah, I say spiritually connected just because just a little background about me and my wife. I met her a couple years after I got out of high school. In college, and she was a little bit younger than me. And we dated for about 10 years off and on, and we really didn't get serious until we decided that we both wanted to settle down and make God the center of our relationship. And that's kind of what brought us together, because we were always off and on, and she was doing her thing, I was doing my thing, and we were just trying to make it work, but for some reason it couldn't work. And then we took a little bit of time apart, and we started getting back into church, and we decided, like, hey, if we're going to do this thing, we're going to do it the right way. And we want to make God the center of our relationship, and we want to have rules that we're going to follow, and that is going to govern us. You know what I mean? A higher something that's higher than both of us. And that is when we started to spiritually align. That is when we started to really, really make things work and start to settle down. And that's kind of when things really took off for us. And ever since then, he's been faithful to us. He's blessed us with 2 healthy, beautiful children. And obviously, we're making a living. I'm still in school, but she's graduated college, and she's getting ready to graduate with her MBA at the end of the semester. So we're both healthy, and he's had great favor on our relationship and on our marriage. So just having someone that can just take that journey with you, man, and you don't have to be by yourself is a benefit in itself.
Thanks for sharing that, Carl. Well, gentlemen, we're out of time, man. We could talk on this call for hours, man. There's so much more I wish we could talk to, but we're out of time. But I'm going to ask you in closing, there's a young man listening right now who's going through, he's in the valley of decision and choice, and what he's going to do, what he wants to be, what he wants to become. Or maybe there's a parent of a young man right now. I'm going to ask you as we close out to each of you to share a word of encouragement to a man on how to be, a young man on how to be, and how to navigate this world as a young Black man. What advice would you give them on how to navigate this world as a young Black man? Because there are young men who are listening to this right now. I can assure you that. There are parents, there are women who are listening right now who are raising sons. There are grandparents who are going to listen to this and see this. They want to know from you guys, a young man in the 30s, what advice can you offer them as they're dealing with their young men to help them navigate this world as a Black man? Who wants to go first? Carl?
I guess I'll go first. If I can give some advice to a young man right now, I would tell him to be patient and stay true to yourself. A lot of times, as young men, sometimes we feel pressured to be on a timeline, and things have to get done in a certain time in a certain way. And it's just like, everybody's timeline is different. And, just because you're going through something right now doesn't mean that it's going to be that way forever. Don't make permanent decisions on temporary feelings. Take your time, and take your time and, be true to yourself. Stick to your principles and your morals, and I think you'll be okay.
Michael.
I'm going to start where Carl hinted on this, I learned this in my mid-20s. Get out your emotions, right? Because emotions can be the death of us. You don't want to make decisions out of emotions, and I think that's, whether that's financial, personal, relationship, sometimes you have to take a step back, think about it, and then make a decision. And that goes for the parents too, because parents can be like, well, my son or daughter did this. No. Understand, why did he do that, right? Because I think the why before the action is important. understand why your son did this and figure out how can I correct that. That's to the parents. I think a lot of parents are missing that. They're just upset at a situation their son might have done and didn't think about the why behind it. But to a lot of young men, dream big. I think that's the biggest thing you can do. Dream big. I'll even challenge you to get a sheet of paper and write 300 goals and dreams and bucket lists you want to do. And I guarantee if you go after it full-heartedly, in a year, you'll probably get through 75 of it if you have 300.
Excellent. Shawn, bring us home.
I'll tell my young brothers, first of all, love yourself. Love yourself wholeheartedly, all right? Don't let society tell you that you're not good enough. Don't let TV tell you you're not good enough. Naysayers, none of that. You are more than good enough for anything you put your mind into to advance yourself and to advance your family. And whatever passion, gift, talent that's been blessed to you, to use that talent, that gift to advance yourself and to advance whatever it is that's being called on you to do. You know your talents, go out and get it. You got a brother in me that loves you, all right? Whatever you have that you got going on, man, just know that you have people praying for you all the time. You have people that is walking with you in this journey all the time, whether it's your family, whether it's strangers that you have not yet known yet, that's going to be in your life coming up soon. It's all going to be part of the purpose. So remember to love yourself. Remember to remember that you have a gift, a talent, a skill. Use that gift, that talent, that skill, whatever it is, all right? Because God's blessed you with that. And it's meant to be used to help others in your ministry walk, okay? So I'll tell a young brother, any young brother, young, old, what have you, to love themselves, because the society teaches us different. But we got to remember that it starts here in the heart. You know, if we don't love ourselves, and we're going to be done for out here in this society, man. This society's dark out here. So we got to make sure that we're lifting each other up. All right. And if you know another brother, you know, that's young like you, that needs that lift their chin up as well. Remind them of how much of a blessing that they are. Remind them how much you love them. Don't be afraid to tell a brother that you love them. All right. That's another thing with us is that, you know, we can't say I love you to our own brothers, because that again comes off as the soft, meek-minded, whatever. Nah, we need people to let us know that we got love for each other. We need that. All right. So that way we can continue to go with this walk. So be blessed, brothers. Be blessed.
Well, folks, as I promised, I told you you're going to enjoy this show. I told you these young men, they are thought provokers. They're going to drop some gems and some nuggets tonight. And they surely didn't disappoint. And I'm sure you enjoyed listening to them this evening. Gentlemen, I want to thank you once again for being on the show tonight. Again, I know we could talk for hours, man. This could be a never-ending conversation, but I really appreciate you guys taking time to be on this show this evening and just sharing what you shared, man, because you guys are all doing some great things and positive stuff in the community. And you are the epitome of what I call a good man. You have those characteristics and qualities that I shared earlier. You each have those, and you are making a difference in the lives of the next generation. And I, as the older man here, salute you for what you're doing, for carrying on that legacy of Black men who are getting involved. Folks, if you're enjoying this podcast, as I always say, you know, hit me up at timeout@tonyrprice.com. And as I always say, until our next show, be safe, give thanks, and look for opportunities to encourage others. Now it's time to get back into the game. We out.